Oh, Hi. Sorry, I was finishing the sandwich.
Yeah.
Hi. Boy, we nearly blew off the parking lot this morning.
It was windy, wasn't it? I just walked out the door and I thought, oh, they're going to blow away today.
And it made it so cold. I had on a puffy coat with a hood and my sunglasses because it was bright. And then my mask. I mean, I looked like a mummy or something. I don't know what I look like. But I've never seen Janice's robes.
It's like she's about to take off. Huh?
You know, they need to compile a remembrance of this last year and a half, because I kept thinking, is this funnier, or the time when the speakers flew down, or the time when there was the bee in the communion cup? Do I have to drink this? There's a bee in the communion cup. Or a fly or something. I don't know what it was. But anyway. And I'm sure there are many more stories I don't know about.
Oh. Well, as you may or may not know, Father David will not be leading us today.
Right. He told us you would be our leader.
Yes.
And so we'll limp along without him.
I'm gonna find the book here.
Get a couple of more minutes before we actually start digging into this. So how are you all doing now with struggling with the COVID? Are you all vaccinated?
I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Well, we
We
got
both
vaccinated
are.
too.
Yeah.
We took advantage of our immune condition to attend a wedding last weekend.
Oh, good. Good. How was it?
Well, there's Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, everyone. How are y'all?
Pretty
Good.
I was
I'm
just
going
gonna.
to go on mute. My husband's watching Shogun and it can get noisy. So I'm going to mute myself for a while. So I don't disturb everybody with this noise in the background.
Oh, Nancy, I just telling everybody I attend. Suzanne and I are vaccinated, and we took advantage of that to attend a wedding in Birmingham, Alabama. The wedding was the marriage between a girl that we've known for a fairly long time. I can't remember exactly the name of the organization, but Christian organization. We supported her through this organization in a orphanage in the Ukraine when she was just a little girl. And we wrote letters back and forth. She only spoke Ukrainian and Russian, and so everything had to be translated. But it turns out, hey, Peter. Glad you're here.
Yep. Just takes a while to push the button that says include internet audio.
Just starting a story about a wedding Suzanne and I attended Wednesday, taking advantage of our immune status. Last weekend, I should say. At any rate, the little girl in her letters frequently said, I sure wish someone in the United States would adopt us. She had two sisters in the orphanage with her. And sure enough, a family in Birmingham, Alabama did adopt them. And they went over there, and Natasha entered school speaking no English whatsoever, just Ukrainian and Russian. Jumped right into American school. By the time she graduated, she was a straight A student. And Suzanne flew out there and attended her graduation. I couldn't go at that time because I was still working. And so she went on to enter Samford University in Birmingham, got a degree in sociology, and is now working on her PhD. And so she's met a nice young man who interested in similar things. They're a very well matched couple, both very charming and outgoing and interested in many of the same things. And that was the first time I'd ever seen her in the flesh. It was a real super experience for us. So we attended their wedding and a little reception afterwards and got to know her and her family, both her adoptive family and the family of the groom. They were everyone. It was just very nice to us. Anyway, happy story.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, well, chapter 11 today in Roar, entitled Shadowlands. So Roar's creating another construct, conceptual construct, which he identifies as the shadow self. The shadow self is what you refuse to see about yourself and what you do not want others to see. And then he makes another construct, the persona. Your persona is what most people want from you and reward you for, and what you use to identify with for some reason. So I'm just curious as to what, well, I'm going to ask everybody what their thoughts are on these constructs, the persona and the shadow self, and how they differ from one another, according to what Roar says. Further, he on them a lot more.
Sabiha,
There?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Can hear
Okay.
you. See you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna need to mute it because I'm in a parking lot again, so, figure out how to get muted.
I touch the screen and then for the mute.
Touch my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then does it say mute somewhere?
It says share chat and participants. Oh, there's a mute microphone over here. Should I mute my audio? Okay, well, I'm going to mute it since I'm in a parking lot and it causes a lot of distraction. Okay?
Oh, you're dedicated. Okay, I was just asked the question about what people thought about these two ideas that Roar constructs. One he calls the shadow self, and the other persona. What kind of thoughts do these constructs stimulate in your fertile and active minds?
I never thought about them before. I mean, they were new ideas. And it was interesting because I think it was just yesterday, I was reading an article in the newspaper, and it was a celebrity who is writing a novel, a memoir, I guess. And she talked about all the work she had to do in her shadow life.
Oh,
And
Oh,
it kind of clicked because that's just what we were studying. And I've never really thought about it.
no,
Having
neither.
a personality like that. So it's a new one for me.
anyone else?
Well, I had actually thought about it a whole lot over years because my late husband was one of those people that kind of bottled everything in. And I think that can be very, very dangerous. And then you kind of can crash. And, you know, on the outside, he was always so happy go lucky and all that. And he never really dealt with his own feelings when our son died.
Mm,
And it was years later, and it took us both really by surprise. But I have always told people, just feel what you're feeling, you know, don't try to hide it. There's no right or wrong way for any of that. Of course, I know this is not really what this guy's talking about, but that's what it made me think of. But in my professional life, I love what I did. I loved what I taught, and I loved teaching the age group I did. But I was always terrified. Am I really a fraud? Am I really not any good? And I just don't know it. So I was very fearful of my shadow life. Whereas on the surface, you know, I have undergraduate master's degrees in political science, and certainly should be qualified to teach what I taught. But I was just always worried it was going to come crashing down, that my persona and my shadow self were going to just collide.
does anyone make a differentiation or see a difference between the shadow self and the persona? How are they different? And Roar makes them different.
I think one is who we want to be and who we want people to see us as being. And the other is the part of us we tried to hide, and even sometimes hide from ourselves.
Right. Right.
Right. I guess the major difference is the can't think of a good word. The ability of other people to see the persona and not be able to see the shadow self. One is hidden and one is revealed. And Aurora makes the point that the persona does not choose to see evil in itself, but it always disguises what it's displaying to other people as something good, refuses to display anything as evil. Personified by the phrase, I'm just doing this for your own good, which may in fact be something very evil you're doing. So Rohr creates these constructions to talk about doing something about them or with them. So what can you tell me he proposes that is the shadow work that must be done in the second half of life? he uses, he hangs this on a metaphor based on the 25th verse of the 5th chapter of Matthew, where Christ is saying, make peace with someone, do not be angry with them, or that it may lead to bad things.
And he also said you must recognize the plank in your own eye.
Right.
And then, only then will you see clearly enough to take the splinter out of your brother or sister's eyes. In other words, recognize who you are and what you're about or something.
Mm-hmm. So the thing that Rohr is talking about is he calls it shadow boxing, trying to disassemble and remove your shadow from your inner being, and somehow make yourself, mostly it seems to me, he's talking about developing the Christian virtue of humility. Is that correct? Which kind of raises the question, what's the difference between what Rohr calls shadow boxing and the traditional Christian practice of regular self-examination in private and corporate confession? Are they much different or totally different, or what similarities might exist there? I mean, he does make a distinction between what is a sin and what is a shadow. Anyone have any thoughts on that distinction? Are there attributes of our shadow life, or are they, what are they?
Come on, y'all. Somebody, I can't be the only one.
Well, on page 128, it says, sin and shadow are not the same. We're so encouraged to avoid sin that many of us instead avoid facing our shadow. And then we ended up sinning even worse. So
Okay.
that's quite a concept.
Well, I can ask this kind of, what is the point of all of this? What is Rohr proposing that we are trying to accomplish with this shadow boxing, with this of our shadow selves, of our concepts of our life?
Peter, you're muted.
Bia, you're not muted. Say, the gift of shadow boxing on 134 in the second paragraph is the seeing of the shadow and its themes. which takes away much of the shadow's hidden power. Which makes sense. That's something that we work on later on. Sabia,
Yes.
you're not muted.
Okay, I'm trying to find it again.
I was touching.
I don't know.
Must be windy in that parking lot.
And then not only does the author have that to say about shadow boxing, it's the seeing of the shadow. We go into what Helen was saying. In our work with men, we have found that many men, this inability or refusal to feel their deep sadness takes the form of aimless anger.
Yeah.
Which is sad. I think one of the things and I haven't been to a lot of classes at church, I see that a lot of women are in the class, and then I look at this statement by the author and they correlate well, which is not a good situation, but it seems accurate. Men aren't searching for. Sabia, you seem to have found the mute button, which is wonderful. And that's a good thing. Many depressed people, this is the bottom 35. Many depressed people are people who have never taken risks, never moved outside their comfort zone, never faced necessary suffering. And so their unconscious knows that they have never lived or loved. Bad situation. Towards shadow.
Sounds pretty bad to me.
Yes. Yes. So the question you posed regarding shadow boxing, it's well worth. Not only is it a thing, but it's a thing worth doing and highly valuable. And I think the author is arguing necessary.
I think he says that if you don't do this, you can't move on. Shadow work, I don't know what, because I've got it on a Kindle, but shadow work is humiliating work, but properly so. If you do not eat such humiliations with regularity and make friends with the judges, the courtrooms, and the officers, in other words, all those who reveal to you and convict you of your own denied faults who come into your life, you will certainly remain in the first half of life forever. So if you don't face your demons or you don't face your faults, you can't fall upward, I guess.
Whatever falling upward is.
Well, I think it's coming back up. That was kind of the first part of the book where you kind of reach a crisis for some reason and crash, and that you come to a sort of a new realization and fall upward toward God.
Somewhere he uses the phrase true self. I believe at one point he says, the aim of the stripping off the shadow self is to review or to reveal and come to know and live in your, quote, true self. You remember that a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah, what he's talking about.
Yeah, well, true self would be someone who's like, let's see, on 132, sorry, Helen, is the printed book. In the second paragraph, speaking about saints, the saint is precisely one who has no eye to protect or project. His or her eye is in conscious union with the I am of God. And that is more than enough. Divine union overrides any need for self-hatred or self-rejection. Such people do not need to be perfectly right, and they know they cannot be anyway. They just try to be in right relationship. In other words, they try above all else to be loving. Love holds you tightly and safely and always. So, and such people have met the enemy and know that the major enemy is me, as Pogo said, and Pogo is wise. But you do not hate me either. You just see through and beyond me. Shadow work literally saves you from yourself, your false self, which is the foundational meaning of salvation to begin with.
Aha,
Ah,
that's a pretty broad statement. The foundational meaning of salvation.
yeah, he's a broad speaker.
So Rohr's definition of salvation is finding your true self.
I guess you could take this paragraph literally and then go to the Gospels and say, those don't match up. So I'm hoping that with a lot of license for the author, that we're not trying to make them one and the same statement, because that won't fly.
I do remember somewhere studying Helen Shakespeare, where there's the phrase, I think it's in, is it in, I can't remember which play it is, but the father is giving advice to his son, and he says, "To your own self be true." And I remember we kind of tore that apart in our discussions of the play. And that's back in maybe college or high school, but at any rate. Yes. I will say something about his talking about, he talked a lot about saints in this. Saint, the people who have been able to wrestle successfully with the shadow self. And I can give an example. This is a Christian missionary monk named Anskar, Anskar. He was born in 801 and died in 865. So after the Roman Empire. He was a contemporary of Charlemagne. And in fact, he was doing missionary work in Germany. Well, he was a monk, a missionary monk. Charlemagne sent him to Denmark at the request of a king in Denmark who wanted to find out about Christianity. And so Anskar is kind of known as the first missionary to the Danes. But there were some other problems, mostly political, that drove him out of Denmark. He returned to, excuse me. He returned to northern Germany and was the first Archbishop of Hamburg, Germany. He was very successful in his work there. He ended the slave trade. Apparently there was an active slave trade going on in northern Germany at that time. And pretty much converted northern Germany to Christianity, built hospitals, built up a monastery and a church, and then they were attacked by Vikings who burned it all down, the church, the monastery, all his property, everything. And so he just set to work again, began building it all back. But then he had some reason to be in contact with a very king that burned down his property, and he befriended him. They became, somehow, he managed to reach out to him, and they became friends. He was attributed with a number of miracles and so forth. But when someone was talking about this with him sometime before he died, he is quoted as saying, "If I were worthy of my Lord's sight, I'm sorry, if I were worthy in my Lord's sight, I would ask of him to grant me one miracle, that he would make me a good man." I think that's what the kind of thing that Rohr's referring to. But a lot to do, it seems to me, to the Christian virtue of humility and developing a true sense of humility. I know I've always been taught that humility isn't simply self-degradation or hating yourself, but it's something much more profound. Okay, Rohr also talks about your gold. Says you need to keep your gold. What's he talking about? Anybody have any idea?
Is it the goal of losing this or working away from the shadow self, or having a greater understanding of the shadow self and getting a greater understanding of the persona of who you are?
I'm not sure. He just says somewhere you have to keep your gold.
Oh, gold.
Gold.
Oh.
Where is that?
134, it looks like, at the top of the page. Yeah. Just before the page before depressions and sadness heading. Yeah.
On 133 on in the iPad, the Kindle.
I couldn't understand you, Nancy.
It's on 133 on the Kindle. I have a
Yeah,
Kindle version too.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I mean, I'm looking at the page. I just don't see where it is.
It's the last paragraph.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Is he trying to say that we need to keep our gold and let others keep their gold? In other words, I'm not going to be judgmental about how others treat us or others. I'm not sure. I don't.
Know your strengths. Let's see, it does not mean self-hatred or self-doubt, but exactly the contrary, because you finally accept both your gold, G-O-L-D, and your weaknesses as your own, and they no longer cancel one another out. You can finally do the same for others too. You do not let one or another fault in a person destroy your larger relationship.
Is that kind of like the idea that bullies belittle others so that they can make themselves feel better because they really don't feel good about themselves? Is that something akin to that sort of an idea?
Yeah, that would be converse, right?
What?
Or what were you about to say?
Oh, Helen, I think that can be, what you're saying can be extended into what he's talking about.
In other words, we don't get to be better by making someone else little.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
We
So
can both
that's,
be fine. We can both be good. We can both.
that's, I guess, the concept of letting other people keep their gold.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
You keep yours and you let them keep theirs,
Right.
to quote what he says here.
And then, because everybody has gold that they have available, in the last sentence of that paragraph, he says, here you understand the absolute importance of contemplative or non-dualistic thinking, which we will talk about in a bit.
Well, another chapter, because I don't think he gets into it in this chapter.
Right.
There's one important sentence there. You can finally do the same for others too, and you do not let one or another fault in a person destroy your larger relationship. That says a lot to me right now, because there's someone that well, anyway, that speaks to me right now.
That's good. Just because they're a Democrat doesn't mean that, no.
Well, I would hope not. I don't have horns.
Right.
Oh, there's
Or
so much.
their way of thinking seems like hatred to you. So I'm trying to get my head around who this person really is, when I know that they really are a good person, but some of the things that are coming out of their mouth is troubling to me.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I am dealing with something of that nature right now. And
They had a story similar to that this morning on Sunday morning as I was getting ready. It's, can we celebrate an artist
oh, yes.
while recognizing some of the evil those artists have done and represented? And like Woody Allen, and they were saying, the thing about him,
Picasso. Yeah.
and Picasso and others that really had some pretty seamy personal lives.
True.
And can we recognize their art, or should we? And I thought, ooh, should we? That's.
So we have to recognize the goodness in a person, along with maybe some ideas that are not the best for all people.
Michelangelo could be cited as an example.
Sure.
We're studying the return of the, oh man, my mind just went, the return of the prodigal son in our small group, and Rembrandt
Rembrandt.
that had a lot of problems in his life, and yet his beautiful artwork. And he would be one of these people we would be thinking about right now.
Right.
Yeah, there's some sad cases among the artists and the physicists. Okay, can you recall someone in your life who was obsessed with protecting, promoting, or denying their self-image? And what was that like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we all know a lot of people that hide private parts of themselves that are a little unpleasant. My husband's brother died a month to the day after he did. And we only, toward the end, found out that he was a pretty bad alcoholic. And it wasn't until after or at his funeral when his former wife and they divorced about a year and a half before Doug died, but we're driving for 7 hours to where he was going to be buried, that I really found out all these weird things and lies he'd said that meant nothing, that had no reason or anything. And he hid all that. And the family hid it all.
Yeah.
Could never, really admit till the end that he had problems. Which is very sad. It broke up their marriage and family and everything. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But.
Well, I think it's exactly what Laura is talking about, because
Oh.
it's that kind of hiding and protecting your shadow life. And certainly an alcoholic has a shadow life. Unless you go to AA and say, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Now you bring that up, you said AA, and I'm thinking, sure, I know folks who you find out about that after the fact, or how the habit was financed. You find about that after the fact. Divorce, you find about that well after the problems started. People wait before they talk openly about things like that, and in not doing so, it sounds like they could be hiding things from themselves and others, from others certainly, but from themselves. How do you work through things like that if you do it insularly? Not as easily, I would think. A good counselor is someone to be sought out when you are in need of counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some of that could be denial. You just find it too difficult to reveal, and you just deny it until you hit bottom.
Right.
That's the alcoholism is something that gets into an area that I've never been able to understand, and that's the boundary between sin and sickness. I mean, a physical unhealthiness and a spiritual unhealthiness. Some people just have real sicknesses in their heads.
Yeah, or situations of abuse.
Yeah,
Hidden.
they could have been very much abused as a child, and they just never get over it. Know a number of those instances. But they often too have shadow selves that they're protecting and hiding. It's very damaging. how valuable do you think the practice that we have all been involved in, and that is private and also what's the word? Corporate confession play in that role as Christians?
What do you mean exactly?
Yeah.
Well, every Sunday we all get up together and get a
Oh.
confession.
They were horrible, miserable
That's our
sins.
sins.
All right, a corporate confession. And from my, I don't know when, way back, my father or my mother both taught us to say our prayers at night with the finger prayers. And one of the fingers was confessing to God things you've done in the day that you shouldn't have done, and things that you haven't done and you should have done.
Yeah.
Every day. Private
Things
confession.
known and unknown, done and left undone. Yeah.
Right. Is this somewhat akin to, or maybe overarching, what Laura is talking about here? Or could it be? Of course, the whole trouble with all of this stuff is as soon as you begin to generalize too much, everything falls apart. There's too many exceptions.
Well, I think we all probably hide a part of ourselves at one time or the other during our lives. And then sometimes we just have to let those things go, which I think he's talking about here. But I know I know I have hidden things in my life I didn't want people to know about. But then I had to let it go eventually because I couldn't contain it anymore. It just had to go. And that's when I became more and more mature, not only in experiences in life, but in my faith.
So this is in your own life, you can see this.
Yes, definitely. And I've worked with a lot of people and dealt with a lot of people in church and at work. I worked for 30 years, and there were a lot of people that were acting. I like that one paragraph in here when he talks about hypocrites, because a lot of people are hypocrites. They are acting out in life. They're not, you never really know who they are. I mean, you sort of know, but they never really say who they are. But, there's so many people after you've been with people and worked with them, you sort of know who they are. They can't really act all of it, but a lot of people do act their life. They don't ever have a real life. But I never thought of it in these terms until I read this chapter, until I read all of this.
That is something that happens. Yeah, I can think of a number of people that in my career
yes,
were really very challenging
yes, that's a good word
to work with. And as I think about it, I realize now, as I think about what they did and said and everything, they were very, very protective of their own self-image and of their own, what everybody thought of them and what they could think of themselves.
Were they all surgeons?
Neurosurgeons?
No, were they all surgeons?
Oh. there's the old joke about neurosurgeons. How do many neurosurgeons take to change a light bulb? It's only one. He stands on a ladder, sticks the light in the socket, and as the universe rotates around him, it screws the light bulb in.
That's funny.
Yes, I know one neurosurgeon of that.
Well,
But other people, some above me, some below me,
Right.
in the hierarchy of the organization. And as I think more about it, I can see a lot of what Roar is talking about here.
well, I also see it on kind of two dimensions. There's the bad things in the background that might be dangerous or, bad for your family, like the alcoholism or the abuse or something like that, or the evil side of you that you need to get rid of. But there's also the sad side of you that you need to deal with. I think Peter was the one that read it earlier, and this is kind of at the very end of the chapter. He said, in our work with men, we have found that in many men, this inability or refusal to feel their deep sadness takes the form of aimless anger. The only way to get to the bottom of their anger is to face the ocean of sadness underneath it. Men are not free to cry, so they just transmute their tears into anger. And sometimes it pulls up in their soul in the form of real depression. Men are actually encouraged to deny their shadow self in any competitive society, so we all end up with a lot of sad and angry old men. And sad and angry young men.
Well, yes.
Correct.
Look at the people behind some of these mass shootings.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and on, let's see, later on there, he says, where is it? I can't find it. Well, I think it says with a lot of sad and angry old men. We all end up with a lot of sad and angry old men. That phrase kind of caught my attention because I was wondering what percentage of my circle of old men, which is mostly my whole circle, except for my grandchildren, what percentage of them are so angry and sad? And I don't think it's a large percentage, actually. Maybe that's just because of happy circumstances I have to be in. I think it's certainly something to be concerned about and something to be sensitive to. But praise the Lord, I don't think we're just awash in angry and depressed old men.
But I do think we're awash in sad and depressed and angry young men. That seems to be a huge problem today. Whether they are feeling displaced by society or downtrodden or whatever reason.
Or just not getting your trophies like you used to.
Mm-hmm. Or somehow if you get a trophy, that means I can't.
Yeah. Now that I think is true. Jives with my perception, at least. excuse me. Yeah, I know of someone who's struggling right now in a situation where a person who has been put over this person corporately. He's having to report to the person, and that person he's reporting to is being very non-communicative, and will not open up with a flow of useful information from the top down, because that person, the upper level person, considers information to be power.
Mm.
And he's not willing to empower people below him with information because he's so uncertain of himself. He's afraid that it will give people an opportunity to perhaps even replace him or something. So I guess it's exactly what he's talking about here, Laura. I hadn't thought about that, but I just remembered that one situation. Well, I do have a little bit of misgivings about the very basis of salvation being the discovery of your true self, saving you from yourself and discovering your true self being the foundation of the total definition of salvation. And I sort of balanced many of the things Laura said here in this chapter with one scriptural passage in John where Jesus says, "I am the true vine, you are the branches, abide in me, for apart from me, you can do nothing." And I think my definition of salvation is abiding in Jesus and being able to abide in Jesus. And that may mean giving up my image of myself and immersing myself entirely in abiding in Jesus. That seems like the greater struggle. And if I'm boxing with anything, it's boxing with anything that separates me from that relationship with our Lord.
Well, and maybe that's what he's really trying to say, saving us from ourselves and our own barriers that we can't let go of, that part of us that is not good or we don't like or is detrimental to us, and falling upward to be able to be in better relationship with God. So it's saving us from ourselves, not salvation in terms of eternal salvation.
He says there's a sentence, shadow work literally saves you from yourself, your false self, which is the foundational meaning of salvation to begin with. So when I read that made perfect sense. And that's what you said, Helen. Literally saves you from yourself.
Yeah, my problem with all of this is where the focus is. The focus is on the self.
Well,
the focus, if you're abiding in Jesus, if you are abiding in as a branch on the vine, your focus is on the vine, not on the branch. See what I mean?
It's almost like a catch-22.
Well, it's kind of a
Maybe not, but
it's where your focus is. It's where your ultimate vision is, what you're looking at. And that's the thing that makes me a little bit uncomfortable about this, is there's so much discussion about your goal, yourself, and so forth.
Which we need to discard or get rid of. so we
Right.
can Make our goal God.
Focus on the goal of the Lord Jesus himself and our relationship with him. Okay, well, we've managed to waste a better part of another Sunday afternoon.
it's good.
Anybody have any parting shots?
I don't feel like I've wasted my
No,
better Sunday
Oh,
afternoon.
I'm being facetious. I'm
No.
being facetious. I love being with you guys.
I'll drink to that.
Now, we don't meet next week, right? But we
Right.
will meet.
That's
the week
correct. Easter, we
Right.
will not get together, and then, so we'll be on chapter 12 the week after Easter. I suppose that's the next chapter.
Mhm.
As far as I know, we're going to continue on until we finish the book. Okay, well, I'm wishing all of you a very happy and blessed afternoon. Maybe a nice nap.
You as well.
We'll be in touch.
Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy
Oh,
Easter.
everybody
Thanks, Hart. Thanks for
Yes,
the,
thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Easter.
thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.
Bye.
Bye.